This week we're in Chapter 5, Markup as a Merchandising Tool. The objectives of this chapter: to understand the importance of markup when pricing merchandise, understanding why markup is essential for pricing, and identifying the specific timing of when markup should be applied. To understand the timing of markups, to develop skill in calculating dollar markup and markup percent, mastery of both dollar markup, the raw price difference, and the markup percent, to understand how a buyer averages markup on various items in an attempt to achieve planned markup goals, learning how to balance different markups across various products to hit a predetermined planned markup goal for a department or a category, to define and calculate three types of markup: initial, maintained, and cumulative. Initial markup is the original markup placed on goods when they first arrive. Maintained markup is the actual markup achieved after factoring in markdowns and shortages. And the cumulative markup is the total markup on all merchandise handled during a specific period. Markup is the amount added to the cost price in order to establish the retail price. Markup should be used as a guide rather than a determinant. Markup is the difference between the retail price of the merchandise and its cost value. Markup versus mark-on. Mark-on is something used to refer to the total amount added to the cost of all merchandise in a department, used mostly on a manufacturing level.
What's up, guys? My name is Nick, and today I'm going over how do you calculate initial markup in retail. So today I'm talking about how to calculate initial markup, or IMU as it's called in the retail and fashion industries. So initial markup, you need to divide into two different calculations actually, and that's the initial markup dollars and the initial markup percent of that item. So initial markup is pretty much exactly as it sounds. It's the first markup off of the price of the goods sold or the cost of goods sold to the retailer. So when you're talking initial markup dollars, it's a little easier. So if I sell, for example, this jacket to a retailer for $100, that's the price the retailer pays when they buy it from me. They might list it to their customer at the first price, no sale, no discount, no coupons, no nothing, at say $250. Well, that would mean that the initial markup of this jacket is the difference between the cost of goods sold and then the retail price that the retailer is listing it at. So if you do $250 retail price, subtracting the cost of goods sold, $100, the initial markup dollars of this jacket is $150. Now, when you get into percentages, it's a little bit less intuitive. It's not simply the percentage increase from the cost of goods sold to the initial retail price. Just so you know, that's normally called MSRP by the retailer, or manufacturer's suggested retail price. Manufacturer being the vendor selling the goods to the retailer. But when you do the percentage, if you were to calculate just the increase of this jacket, you would do 250 minus 100, which is 150, and you would then divide that by 100. So that would be 1.5. So the percentage increase in the price is 150%. That's not how you calculate initial markup percentage. Initial markup percentage is calculated by taking the initial markup dollars. Once again, we said that it is $150. So that's the difference between the initial price of the goods and the retail price, $150. And then you divide that by the retail price itself. So you would divide 150 from $250 retail price, and that would give you your initial markup percentage, which is 60%. It's an easy percentage to think of, and it's actually a very standard percentage in the luxury fashion industry. 60% markup or 60 5% markup is very, very common. So a lot of times when you're pricing, wholesale goods, the 60%, you'll just do a 2.5 times multiple to get to your retail price, but we'll go over that in another video. So that's how you calculate initial markup dollars and initial markup percentage. Please, if you have any questions, it's not as simple as it seems sometimes, drop them in the comments. I will respond to every single one and answer your questions. And also, hit the...
Okay, markup defined. Markup equals retail minus cost. Cost equals retail minus markup. Retail equals cost plus markup. Percentages are more meaningful for comparisons. Markup can be calculated as a percent of retail or cost. Calculating markup percent based on retail. Calculated based on retail, retail equals 100%. Dollar markup equals dollar retail minus dollar cost. Markup percent based on retail. Dollar markup divided by dollar retail equals dollar retail minus dollar cost divided by dollar retail. Calculating based on cost. Cost equals 100%. Dollar markup equals dollar retail Sorry, let me say that again. So calculated based on cost. Cost equals 100%. Dollar markup equals dollar retail minus dollar cost. Markup percent based on cost equals dollar markup divided by dollar cost equals dollar retail minus dollar cost divided by dollar cost. Markup based on retail is always less than 100%. Markup based on cost is always larger than based on retail and may exceed 100%. A buyer works with markup in 3 ways. Calculating markup percent when cost and retail are known. Calculating retail when cost and markup percent are known. And calculating cost when retail and markup percent are known. Finding markup percent used when you know what you paid, the cost, and what you are charged, retail. For example, if an item costs $50 and retails for $100, the markup percent is 50%. When you use the formula, markup percent equals retail minus cost divided by retail. Finding the retail price is used when you know the cost and you have a target markup percent you need to achieve. The formula for finding the retail price is retail equals cost divided by 100% minus markup percent. This is often called the complement method for markup. Finding the cost, used when you know the retail price, perhaps due to competition or a fixed price point, and you need to know the maximum cost you can afford to pay a vendor while maintaining your markup goal. The formula is cost equals retail times, in parentheses, 100% minus markup percent. A helpful way to remember these relationships is the retail cost markup triangle. If you know any 2 variables, you can always find the third. To evaluate if an item will reach the department's ultimate goal before purchasing. Markup percent equals markup dollars divided by retail dollars. Before a buyer commits to an order, they must evaluate the markup percent to ensure it will cover operating expenses and contribute to the net profit goal. If the percentage is too low, the buyer may need to negotiate a lower cost or look at the different product. What is markup percent on a jacket that costs $66 and retails for $120? The solution: the markup percent equals markup dollars divided by retail dollars. So in this case, it would be $120 minus $66 and then divide by retail dollars, $120, and you get 45%. To evaluate the retail prices that will be placed on merchandise, considering the cost price and the necessary markup. Retail equals cost divided by cost percent equals cost divided by 100% minus markup percent. Sometimes retailers have a required markup. If they know the cost and the markup required, they can figure out the retail price that they need. Here's an example. Calculate the retail price on a sofa table that costs the store $420 and has a 52% markup. The solution: retail equals cost divided by cost percent. So cost is $420 divided by 100% minus 52% markup equals $875. To determine the price the buyer can afford to pay for each item in order to achieve the markup goal. Cost dollars equals retail dollars times cost percent equals retail dollars times 100% minus the markup percent. Buyers use this when they already have a set retail price, often dictated by the market or competition, and a specific markup goal. By calculating the maximum cost, the buyer knows exactly what they can afford and pay a supplier to remain profitable. This calculation is straightforward as long as you convert your percentage to a decimal first. Determine the cost of a dress that retails for $180 and has a 55% markup. The solution: cost equals retail dollars times cost percent. So that's $180 times 100% minus 55% equals $81. Now let's turn to page 110 and do practice problems 1 through 15. Here I'm going to work a few of them for you. All right, number 1 on page 110. The easiest way to start this is to find out the cost percent, because we know the markup percent is 67 1/4, and on all of these we know that markup percent plus cost percent is always going to be 100%. So first, I'm going to turn this into a decimal, and 100 minus 67.25 equals 32.75. So cost percent is 32.75%. Next, we need to figure out the cost dollar amount, and we're just going to use the formulas in the book. I gave you guys a sheet that has all the formulas. So if we look at number 12 here, to figure out the cost dollar amount, we take the retail dollar amount times the cost percent. So retail dollar amount is 149 times the cost percent, 32.75. And I use my calculator and I get 48.80. So this is going to be the cost dollar amount. Okay, next. Okay, now number 7. So again, we know the markup percent. So the easiest way for me to figure out the cost percent is just to subtract 54% from 100%, since we know that the cost percent and the markup percent always add up to 100%. So I will take 100% minus 54% equals 46%. And I used a calculator to figure that out. So that is the cost percent, 46%. Now we need to figure out, then there's $30 per dozen is the retail dollar amount. So we need to figure out the cost per unit. To figure out, so since we're trying to figure out our cost dollar amount, again, on number 12, on this handout, the formula is the cost dollar amount equals the retail dollar amount times the cost percentage. But first we need to figure out, since there's 30 per dozen, how many, what is the retail amount per dozen? And then we're going to multiply that by the cost percentage, because that's what the formula in the book told us to do. So first we need to figure out 30 divided by 12, and that equals 250. Then we take, so that 250 is the retail dollar amount. So we take 250 times 46%, and it gives us 115 per unit. So that's the answer to the cost dollar per unit is 115. All right, now let's do number 10. In this problem, we don't have the markup percent or the cost percent. So to figure out the cost percent, you can use this formula from the book I wrote on here. It is cost percent equals cost dollar amount divided by retail dollar amount. So the cost dollar amount is $7.83 divided by retail dollar amount $14.50, and then that equals as a percentage it will be 54%. So we will, now we know our cost percentage. So since we know our cost percentage, to find the markup percentage, we can use the complement method by taking 100% minus 54%, and that equals 46%. So 46% is our markup percent. Okay, so I included all of the answers to practice problems 5.1, 1 through 15, and how to solve each one on the next page. So you can work the problems and then refer to the next page to see how to solve them. Markup percent can be calculated on a group of items with different costs and retail values. Markup is calculated on a group of items to determine markup percent on an entire order or shipment. Markup percent equals total retail minus total cost divided by total retail. You have different categories such as sunglasses, jewelry, and clothing, for example. They may all have different markup percentages. You could find the markup percent for each category separately, and then you can add them up to find your total cost, total retail, and total markup percent for the whole store. Here's an example. Find the markup percent on the following order. 14 skirts at $20 each, retail $45 each. 25 blouses cost $18 each, retail $40 each. 10 belts, 16 each, cost, retail $30 each. The solution, let's take 14 times 20 equals 280. 25 blouses times 18, the cost equals 450. 10 belts at 16 a piece cost equals, times 16 equals 160. So let's add all those up and we get 890. Now, let's take 14 skirts times the retail amount, 45 equals 630. 25 blouses times the retail amount of 40 equals 1,000. 10 belts times $30 retail amount equals 300. Add all that up and we get 1930. 1930 minus 890 divided by 1930 equals 53.89%. Now let's do practice problems 5.2 on page 113. Do 2 and 6. All right, let's look at number 2. It says a buyer coordinated a special purchase of men's shirts from a manufacturer. Determine the markup percent on this purchase. This is similar to summary problem number 6, just FYI, in case you want to refer back to this for number 6 on the summary problems. So we have to figure out the total cost dollar amount and the total retail dollar amount first. To do that, you multiply the quantity by the cost on each of these. But on this one, it has 120 per dozen, so we need to break that down. 120 divided by 12 is 10. So we'll do 14 by 15, 24 by 20, 45 by 14, and 10 by 10. I multiply those together and then I add them up to get 1,420. Next, we're going to do 14 by 34, 24 by 38, 45 by 30, and 10 by 25 to get the retail dollar amount. So I add it all up and I get 2,988. All right, then using the formula, we're going to take the markup. To figure out the markup percentage, we need to take the markup dollar amount divided by the retail dollar amount. It says on the formula it's on number 5. So next I subtracted 2988 minus 1420 and I got the markup dollar amount 1568. So then I'm going to take 1568 and divide it by the retail dollar amount 2988 and I get 52.48%. So that is the markup percentage. All right, so number 6, this is also like summary problem number 6. The buyer needs a group of t-shirts for a special sale. He buys 40 dozen at $84 per dozen, 20 dozen at $96 per dozen, and 15 dozen at $120 per dozen. If he marks them all at a sale price of $18 each, what markup percent is realized on the merchandise? So you're going to basically do the same thing as we did on 2. You need to first total the cost amount and then total the retail amount to find the markup dollar amount. So the cost amount we had 40 times 84, 40 dozen times 84 dozen. And then we had 20 dozen times $96 per dozen. Then we had 15 dozen by 120 per dozen. We total that up and we get 70.80. Then for the retail dollar amount, we take 40 times 12 since there's a dozen times 18 since it's $18 per dozen, and we get 86.40. Then we take 20 times a dozen times 18 and we get 4,320. And then we take 15 times 12 times 18 and we get 3,200. And when we total that up, it's 16,200. To find the markup dollar amount, we're gonna take the retail amount, 16,200, and we're gonna subtract the cost, 70.80, and we get 91.20. So to find the markup percent, we take 91.20 divided by retail amount, 16,200, and we get 56.30%. See the next page for answers and how to solve problems 5.2, number 2, and number 6 on page 113. All of these formulas are in the book for all of these. So make sure you refer to the book, and I'll try to post it in modules also. Timing of markups. Markup on merchandise can change throughout the selling season for many different reasons. Markup timing, initial markup, cumulative markup, maintained markup. Sell-through percent is a measure that tells how much of a style or product has been sold. Sell-through percent is the best indicator of the selling success of an item.
Hello. My name is Nick, and today I'm talking about what exactly is sell-in and sell-through rate for fashion retail. So what exactly is sell-in and sell-through rate for fashion retail? As a wholesale vendor, the people who sell the goods to the retailers, this is literally the explanation of pretty much your entire business. So the sell-in rate as the wholesaler to the retailer is the amount of money that you sell into the company. So a department store might come to you during market and they might buy $100,000 worth of goods from you. That $100,000 is your sell-in amount to the retailer. So why is this important? It's the money that you make as a company, as a wholesale company. So as the CEO of this company, they're looking at how much are we selling into these retailers, because the amount of money that we are going to put on our balance sheet, our profit and loss statements of what we're making from this wholesale business. So now let's talk about sell-through. As a wholesale sales rep, sell-through will be your single lifeblood of the business that you look at every day, every week, for sure every Monday when the sales reports come in, because that's when sales reports come in normally from luxury fashion retailers. And you'll check at how good are my products actually selling? How much do the customers actually want the goods that I'm selling to these retailers? And the retailer will look at it in the same way. They'll look at your business as, how are my different vendors selling in comparison to each other on a sell-through percentage rate? So what is sell-through percentage? Sell-through percentage is simply, they normally do it in units or dollars. They'll change slightly, and I'll tell you why in a second. But a sell-through rate in its purest form, if there's no discounting whatsoever, is simply the amount of units sold divided by the amount of units received in total. So if you sell 3 units and they had received in your first shipment or in totality 10 units, the sell-through of that good is 30%. 3 divided by 10. The amount of goods sold divided by the amount of goods initially receipted. And the reason it's a pure example is because when you do it in units, it's going to be straight 30%. But when you do it in dollars, sometimes it's not that simple. Because if you sell goods, you're always going to sell a certain portion on sale. There's going to be, you're going to for sure have sale at the end of the season, but sometimes there's employee purchases where they get a discount. There's different things that will fluctuate your sell-through percentage. So if you do a sell-through in dollars, which is the amount of dollars you sold divided by the amount of dollars you receipted, it might not equal that exact 30% because you might have priced that at $300, but those 3 units sold for $200. So that will fluctuate your sell-through percentage a little bit. So it's usually easiest if you want to see your purest form to divide by the units. And when you're in full price mode, it really should be a good indication of your true sell-through is doing the unit division to get to that 30%. So that's sell-through and that's sell-in. It's an overview of really the wholesale fashion retail business in a very, very short amount of time. But it's super important. If you have any questions at all, drop it in the comments. I'll respond to every single one. And as always, please subscribe. I would love for you to follow this channel. I'm putting fashion business videos out all the time, and we will catch you later.
Averaging markups. Retailers do not apply the same markup percent to all merchandise. Merchandise must be priced to sell in a competitive environment. Buyers must balance markups that are below average with above average markups to achieve the planned markup goal. For example, antique items are valued higher because they are rare as compared with a pair of sunglasses. Even though they might cost the same, the cost might be the same for the antique and the sunglasses, but the retail value is way greater for the antique item. Averaging markup can apply to the markup on entire stock of goods, a single purchase, or a group of purchases. Average markup is determined by working with total cost and total retail. 3 types of averaging: calculating markup percent needed on balance of purchases when planned markup percent is known, averaging costs when retail and markup percent are known, averaging retail when cost and needed markup percent are known. Markup percent equals total retail minus total cost divided by total retail. Calculating markup percent needed on balance of purchases. To calculate the markup percent needed on the remaining purchase when planned markup percent are known. So here's an example. You have certain things that are known and other things that are unknown, and you can figure them out based on the numbers that you already have. So A, total needs cost, is total needs retail times 100% minus markup percent. B, purchases retail, number of units times retail per unit. C, purchases cost, number of units times cost per unit. D, balance retail, total needs retail minus purchased retail. E, balance cost equals total needs cost minus purchase cost. And F, balance markup equals balance retail minus balance cost divided by balance retail. So you just use the formulas and then figure out the unknowns. A buyer for a children's department needs $12,000 worth of merchandise at retail for the month. She has already purchased 200 dresses that cost $18 each and will retail for $30 each. What markup percent must she obtain on the remaining purchase in order to average a 54% markup for the month? Here's the solution. All All right, and we're gonna go over some problems and cover this in more detail, but just so you can see this as an example. To determine costs needed on remaining purchases when retail and plan markup percent are known. So basically here we have the same thing where you have certain numbers that are known and then other things that are unknown. So you just use the formulas and plug in the numbers to figure them out. To determine an average retail price for purchases made at 2 or more different cost prices, the markup is known. Cost A, total cost equals cost of units A times number of units A plus cost of units B times number of units B. B, total retail, total cost divided by 100% minus markup percent. And C, unit retail equals total retail divided by number of units. So again, it's just using the formulas and plugging in the numbers. And I did find I have a sheet that has all the formulas, but they're also in the book. I'm going to post all the formulas in modules so you can refer to them. I think it's really helpful to have all the formulas handy because basically you really have to just rely on the formulas to figure these out. Okay, so these are some examples that we've just gone over, but now I think once you actually start doing it, it will make more sense. It seems like a lot of numbers, and it is, but as long as you just follow your formulas, you can do this. So let's go to page 121 and do practice problems 5.3, 2, 5, 10, and 15. And see the next page for answers and solutions on how to solve. Initial markup is the markup placed on merchandise received in order to cover expenses and reductions and to provide a profit. Retail reductions equals markdowns plus employee discounts plus special customer discounts plus stock shortages. Initial markup percent equals expenses plus profit plus reductions divided by net sales plus reductions. Again, more formulas. Other factors can affect initial markup: workroom or alteration costs or cash discounts. Initial markup percent equals expenses plus profit plus reductions plus alterations minus cash discounts divided by net sales plus reductions. Determine the necessary initial markup percent for a department having these planned figures. The solution: the initial markup percent equals 40,000 expenses plus 5,000 profit plus 10,000 reductions plus 900 alteration costs minus $750 cash discounts divided by $100,000 net sales plus $10,000 reductions equals $55,150 divided by $110,000 equals 50.14%. Markup can be calculated with either dollars or percents of net sales. Net sales equals 100%. Determine the initial markup percent that will be required to achieve a 4% profit using the following figures. The solution: the initial markup percent equals 39.1 expenses plus 4 profit plus 4.2 markdowns plus 6.8 employee discounts plus 1 shortages plus 0.5 alterations minus 0.6 cash discounts divided by 100 plus 4.2 markdowns plus 6.8 employee discounts plus 1 shortages equals 55 divided by 112 equals 49.11%. All right, yeah, it's a lot of numbers, but again, you got to use the formulas. Page 126, let's go to 126 and do practice problems 5.4. Let's do 1 and 3. The next page has answers and how to solve. So of course, if you're watching the video, you can pause this and take as much time as you need to go over it. It's also in the slides. Cumulative markup. Cumulative markup is the average markup resulting from the markup on the beginning inventory and the purchases received during a specific period. Cumulative markup is calculated on a season to date basis. All right, and here's some more formulas. I'm not going to read them all. I'll let you read them on your own. It's just, again, using formulas and then plugging in the numbers. Calculating cumulative markup. Refer to the formulas in the book on page 128. Here's another example. The shoe department showed an opening inventory of $80,000 at retail with a markup of 48%. During the month, purchases were received in the amount of $30,000 at cost that were marked up 52%. Find the cumulative markup percent for the department. So here's the solution. Now let's go do practice problems 5.5 on page 129, number 1 and number 2. And again, I've included step-by-step solutions and answers for all of these problems for you. So again, you can pause, take as much time as needed. Also, this is also in the slides. Maintained markup is the final markup obtained by a retail store when merchandise is sold. Maintained markup is based on actual sale of goods rather than on planned sales. Retail reductions, including markdowns, stock shortages, and discounts, reduce the retail value that can actually be achieved. Maintained markup does not reflect deductions for cash discounts and workroom or alteration costs. The buyer cannot determine maintained markup in advance. All right, here we go with more formulas. Maintained markup and maintained markup percent. The relationship between maintained markup and gross margin. Each represent markup achieved after the merchandise is sold. Maintained markup differs from gross margin in that gross margin takes into consideration cash discounts and alteration workroom costs. More formulas. Gross margin and gross margin percent. All right, so let's do practice problems 5.6 on page 132, number 3 and number 4. Again, the answers and solutions are on the next page. So yeah, pause and take as much time as you need, or refer to the slides while you're working these. So that wraps up chapter 5. This chapter is basically a lot of formulas and plugging in a lot of numbers. I am posting the formulas in modules for you to refer to, but they are also in the book. So All right, have a great week.